Right now, there's a good chance one of these 6 TVs is sitting in your living room. 6 major television brands that state attorneys general, federal regulators, and the company's own settlement filings have all confirmed are collecting data on what you watch, when you watch it, and in some cases, what you say in the same room. Not a rumor. Not a recycled warning from a decade ago. Real lawsuits filed in the last 8 months, some already settled, some still working through the courts right now. Here's what makes this one different from most privacy warnings you've seen. This isn't about some sketchy app you accidentally downloaded. This is built into the television itself, active the moment you connect it to Wi-Fi, and in one case on this list, it comes with a legal disclosure so strange you'll want to hear it word for word before you believe it's real. And here's the part that makes this worth your full attention instead of just a passing headline. This isn't one company caught doing something unusual. This is 6 of the biggest names in television across 3 continents, all running some version of the same underlying system. At the exact same time, regulators in multiple states finally started paying attention. That's not a coincidence. That's an entire industry that built its business model around it. Before we get into it, if this is useful to you, hit that like button and subscribe if you're new here, because I break down exactly this kind of thing every single week. The stuff hiding in plain sight in products you already own. We're counting down 6 television brands by name with lawsuit settlements and regulatory filings to back up every single one. And stick around to the end, because after the 6, I'm giving you 3 real ways to avoid all of it, including the one brand still standing outside this entire mess and the specific gear I'd actually buy to keep this problem out of your living room for good. Let's start with number 6. At number 6, TCL, one of the fastest growing TV brands in the country, known for putting massive screen sizes within reach of almost any budget. The bait is simple. A 75-inch TV for the price competitors charge for 55 inches. For a lot of households, that alone settles the decision before anything else gets considered. Here's the mechanic. TCL was one of 5 major manufacturers named in a lawsuit filed by the Texas Attorney General in December 2025, accused of using automatic content recognition, technology capable of capturing a screenshot of whatever's on your screen roughly twice every second, then matching that against a massive content database to build a detailed record of everything you watch, live TV, streaming apps, even a connected game console or Blu-ray player. That record doesn't stay with TCL either. The complaint alleges it gets sold to advertisers looking to target you across other platforms entirely. The tell here goes beyond the tracking itself. The lawsuit specifically raised a second concern layered on top of the first. Because TCL is a Chinese company, it falls under China's national security law, which can legally compel Chinese companies to share collected data with the Chinese government upon request. That's not the same claim as the tracking itself. It's an entirely separate legal exposure sitting on top of it. The cost as of this video is that TCL's case remains open and unresolved, still working through the courts. No settlement, no court-ordered changes, nothing forcing the practice to stop yet. You won't believe what's coming up next, because the next brand on this list didn't just get sued. It got hit with a court order before the case even went to trial. Number 5. Hisense, another rapidly growing brand competing hard on price and picture quality, especially in the mini-LED space. The bait is the spec sheet. Genuinely impressive picture technology, often priced well below what similar performance costs from more established brands. The mechanic mirrors TCL almost exactly. The same Texas lawsuit, the same automatic content recognition system, the same allegation of building a viewing profile without meaningful consent. But Hisense's case moved faster than the others. The tell is the timing. A Texas judge granted a temporary restraining order against Hisense on December 17, 2025, just 2 days after the lawsuit was filed, immediately barring the company from collecting Texas residents' viewing data while the case proceeds. Courts don't grant that kind of emergency order lightly. It signals a judge looked at the evidence early and decided it couldn't wait for a full trial. The cost, same as TCL, includes the added national security question. The complaint raised the same concern about China's national security law applying to Hisense, given the company's ties. I'm sure you've walked past this exact concern without knowing it, because the next brand on this list isn't a budget option at all. It's one people specifically buy because they trust the name. At number 4, Sony, a brand built almost entirely on trust and picture quality. The kind of name people reach for specifically because they don't want to gamble on an unfamiliar manufacturer. The bait is the reputation itself. Decades of consumer electronics credibility, a premium price point that implies a premium, more respectful product. Here's the mechanic, and this is what separates Sony from the others on this list. Sony's ACR system, called Samba Interactive TV, isn't run entirely in-house. It's powered by Samba TV, a completely separate company with its own privacy policy, its own data practices, and its own customer list of advertisers buying access to that viewing data. Your information doesn't just go to Sony. It goes to a third party you likely never chose to do business with at all, one whose entire business model is built around collecting exactly this kind of data from as many television brands as it can sign up. The tell is buried in the lawsuit's own language. The complaint specifically alleges that Sony deceptively guides consumers toward activating ACR during setup, while burying any real explanation of what that means in dense legal text few people ever read. The cost, as of this video, is that Sony's case is still active, still working through the courts, with no settlement yet reached. You're not going to see this next one coming, because it's not a challenger brand at all. It's the single largest television manufacturer on the planet. Number 3. Samsung, the world's biggest TV maker by a wide margin. The default choice in more living rooms than any other brand on this entire list combined. The bait is simply being everywhere. Market leader, dominant retail shelf space, the TV a lot of people buy without doing any research at all, specifically because the name itself feels like a safe choice. The mechanic runs through a system Samsung brands as viewing information services, capturing the same kind of second-by-second viewing data as everything else on this list. Samsung was hit with its own temporary restraining order on January 6, 2026, barring the company and its partners from collecting, using, selling, or sharing Texas residents' ACR data while the case moved forward. The tell is what happened next. Samsung became the first of the 5 manufacturers to actually settle, agreeing on February 26, 2006, to obtain explicit consent before collecting this data and to rewrite its consent screens to be clear and obvious, rather than buried. And just months later, in May 2016, Samsung began directly emailing its own smart TV customers, confirming outright that ACR runs on their televisions and collects viewing history, a personalized service ID, and their IP address. A company doesn't send that kind of direct confirmation email unless it's already been forced to. The cost here is scale. This is the world's largest TV manufacturer, meaning more televisions running this system than any other brand on this list, by a significant margin. When a company this size settles rather than fights and then follows up with a direct customer notification rather than staying quiet about it, that's usually a sign the underlying practice was harder to defend than the marketing ever let on. This next one might be the most important entry on the list, because everything happening right now already happened to this exact company once before nearly a decade ago. At number 2, Vizio, a budget-focused brand that's been part of this exact story for far longer than any other name on this list. The bait, like TCL and Hisense, is value. Solid picture quality for a price that undercuts the bigger names. Here's the mechanic, and here's why this one hits differently. Starting back in February 2014, Vizio's smart TVs continuously tracked what customers were watching on what the FTC described as a second-by-second basis, transmitting that data by default without the customer ever opting in. The tell isn't a new lawsuit. It's a settlement that already happened once. In 2017, Vizio paid a $2.2 million fine to the FTC for exactly this practice. This isn't a new company getting caught for the first time. This is a company that already promised regulators it would fix this, once before. The cost is what happened after the fix. Earlier this year, the FTC reopened Vizio's original consent decree after receiving complaints that the opt-out toggle customers had been using was getting silently switched back on through firmware updates, without customers doing anything at all. That's the detail that separates Vizio from every other entry on this list. This isn't a company that's never been told to stop. It's a company that agreed to stop once, got caught doing it again through a software update nobody asked for, and is now back in front of regulators for a second round. And now, the one I've saved for last, because it's the entry that earns the word sitting on your thumbnail right now. Taking the number 1 spot, LG, and this is the one where wiretapping stops being a scary word we chose for the title, and becomes a word LG's own lawyers actually put in writing. The bait is the same trusted name pull as Sony and Samsung, a globally recognized electronics brand, especially strong in the premium OLED space, the kind of TV people specifically pay more for expecting better treatment. The mechanic starts the same way as everything else on this list. LG runs its own ACR system, branded Live Plus, and settled its own Texas lawsuit on May 11, 2026, agreeing to add clearer disclosure pop-ups and an actual opt-out option. On its own, that would have made LG a fairly ordinary entry on this list, similar to Samsung. Here's where it stops being ordinary. LG's current terms of service, reported on in July 2026, contain a section titled Voice Recognition and Privacy Compliance. It states that if the television's AI voice features record the voice of a family member, a guest, or anyone else in the room, it is the TV owner's own legal responsibility to obtain their consent and inform them they may be recorded, specifically to comply with, and this is the actual language, applicable wiretapping, eavesdropping, and privacy laws. The tell is that sentence itself. LG isn't hiding from the word wiretapping. It's using the word directly, in its own legal terms, while shifting the legal responsibility for that recording onto you, the person who's simply plugged in a television. The cost is genuinely unsettling once you think it through. Many states legally require all parties in a room to consent before a conversation can be recorded. If LG's own terms are accurate about what the television is capable of, a guest in your home who never agreed to any of this could, in theory, become part of a legal problem that isn't LG's to answer for. It's yours. Think about what that actually means in practice. Nobody hosts a movie night by first reading their television's terms of service out loud to their guests. Nobody warns a babysitter, a repair technician, or a family member visiting for the holidays that the TV in the room might be listening and analyzing what they say. LG's own paperwork says that's exactly the step it's now leaving in your hands, not theirs. That's all 6. Take a breath, because now we're flipping this completely. Here's how to keep every single one of these tactics out of your living room for good. 3 ways to protect yourself and family. Here's the good news. Buried under everything you just heard. You don't need 6 different fixes for 6 different brands. You need 3 decisions, made once, and this entire category of problem disappears from your home. Way 1. Buy a genuinely non-smart TV. No smart operating system at all means there's no automatic content recognition system running in the background, because the software that would run it was never installed in the first place. This isn't a workaround. It's the cleanest possible fix, because you're removing the entire mechanism rather than trying to opt out of it after the fact. If you want a specific brand to search for, this is the one I'd point you to, Westinghouse. It's one of the last widely available manufacturers still selling genuinely non-smart televisions at accessible mainstream prices, rather than treating dumb TV as a rare specialty product. Their 32-inch model currently sits with well over 1,000 reviews on Amazon and a solid 4.1-star rating, meaning this isn't a fringe untested option, it's a real product with a real well-documented track record behind it. I've dropped a link in the description if you want to take a closer look. Why this specific option matters is worth spelling out. Most manufacturers have shifted almost entirely to internet-connected models over the last several years, which means true non-smart TVs have quietly become the exception rather than the rule. Westinghouse is one of the few mainstream names that kept building them anyway, at a size and price point that actually works for a bedroom, a kitchen, a dorm room, or anywhere else you want to screen without inviting one more device into this entire tracking ecosystem. Way 2. Keep the smart TV, but never connect it to Wi-Fi, and use a separate streaming device instead. A smart TV with the internet connection skipped during setup behaves exactly like a non-smart display. No ACR system can phone home if it's never been given a network to phone home through. Instead, plug in a streaming device you control directly, one with a transparent privacy menu instead of a manufacturer currently facing a state lawsuit. The 3 I'd actually trust for this: Roku, which runs its own closed system with a clearly documented privacy settings menu; Amazon Fire TV, purchased as an official device rather than a third-party clone; and a Google TV device like Chromecast with Google TV or an NVIDIA Shield, since Google has stated the Google TV platform itself doesn't use ACR to identify specific viewing content the way the TV brands on this list do. One honest caveat worth saying out loud: no streaming device is a perfect data vacuum either, so it's still worth spending 2 minutes in whichever one you choose and checking its own privacy and ad personalization settings. But you're at least dealing with one company's policy you can actually read instead of a TV manufacturer currently named in active litigation. Links to all 3 are in the description if you're interested. Way 3. If you already own one of the 6 TVs on this list, go disable ACR manually. Every one of these brands has a real working off switch. Even if it's buried a few menus deep, look for wording like Viewing Information Services, Live Plus, Viewing Data, or Smart TV Experience under Settings, Privacy, or Terms and Conditions. It won't undo what's already been collected, but it stops the collection going forward, and it takes less time than the ad you just watched before this video started. That's 6 major TV brands actively tied to data collection, lawsuits, settlements, and regulatory action, backed by the Texas Attorney General's Office, the FTC, and the company's own settlement filings, and 3 ways to keep every single one of these tactics out of your home. Whether that's a non-smart TV, a disconnected smart TV paired with a streaming device you actually trust, or simply switching off the tracking on the TV you already own. The scariest part of this story isn't the tracking itself. It's how normal it's become to plug in a brand new television and never once think about what it's quietly sending back out. Every one of these 6 brands sells millions of units a year, which means this isn't some rare edge case you got unlucky with. It's the default experience for most households in the country right now, sitting there working exactly as designed. If this saved you from connecting one of these 6 TVs the way it came out of the box, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me which one of these 6 you own, or if you've already made the switch to a non-smart setup. Share this with anyone in your life about to buy a new TV, because this is exactly the kind of thing that's worth knowing before the purchase, not after. Subscribe and turn on that notification bell so you don't miss what's coming next, because these settlements and lawsuits are still actively moving, and I'll be right here breaking down what changes the moment it happens. Stay sharp, stay safe, and watch the next one.